Hey guys, Callista here with Avalili Permaculture and the Earth Skills Institute. Today I'm going to do a quick video on transplanting your seedlings. So when you start your seeds inside and they start to get a little bit bigger, at some point you're going to have to transplant them, because if you don't keep upping the size of the pot that they're in, it's going to stunt their growth and it could cause problems with root binding and things like that in the future, so that when you go to transplant them out into your garden, the roots have essentially formed such a tight ball around themselves that they can't expand outward, and it's going to stunt the growth of your plants. So make sure that you transplant them at the right time. How do you tell when is the right time? Well, I'm going to show you. So there's a couple of different techniques that I've started with here. I planted some in sort of group plantings, where I've planted a few seeds in the same sort of starting pot, which I'm going to separate and put into different pots. And then other ones I've started with just a single plant, where I started with a couple seeds in there just to make sure they all germinated, and then pinched some off so that there was just a single, the strongest plant growing in that pot. So I'm going to show you both techniques here for starting your seeds and transplanting them. So there's a couple of things you're definitely looking for. With the single plant starts here, I'm going to just flip my camera around here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Alright, so with your single plant starts here, so this guy right here, he's just one in a pot. I'm going to transplant him directly into another pot. To check if he's ready, what I'm going to do is press on the bottom of the pot, kind of loosen this up a little bit on the bottom. You can do this with two hands simultaneously. And then I'm going to tug on the stem at the top here, grab it right at the base of the stem just gently and pull it up. And if it comes up and the root ball stays together, you can see the roots around the edge there. It's staying together in a nice little neat ball. Then I know that that's ready to transplant. If I try pulling it up and it all falls apart, then I know it needs to be in that pot for a little bit longer until the roots can hold all of the soil in that pot together. Now there's a fine line there, because if you pull it up and you see that the roots are curling around each other and they're really starting to form kind of almost a pot essentially around themselves, then you might have left that too long. So this one is getting borderline too long there. That's needs to be transplanted right now. It's actually kind of perfect. It's not too root bound just yet, but it stays together in a nice ball. So just so you know what that looks like. So if you have multiples, like these guys have a few in here, that's a different story. Those are you're gonna want to separate those before they get to the point where their roots are all sticking together and they're really hard to separate apart. So there's a couple of plants in here that need to be pulled apart and separated, so I'm going to be doing those today, and I'll have to be much more careful with those, because when I go to pull them apart and take them out of here, the whole root ball is going to kind of crumble apart. So I'm going to have to be really gentle with those and make sure that my pot's ready to go and get those in soil as soon as possible. So what I do is I start with my pots ready to go. If I'm transplanting out of these nice little 6-packs that I have here into a nice little 3-inch pot, you don't want to go too big. Small jumps is better for the plants. The problem with going to too much of a bigger pot is that if you end up not having enough time for that plant to fill out the entire pot and create a nice root ball that holds everything together before you have to transplant it out, then it's going to make it very challenging for you to transplant it out. So just smaller jumps is better. So this guy, I just filled it up. I don't know if you guys can see that. I just filled it up about a quarter of the way, so that when I go to put my root ball in there for my 6-pack, the top of the plant will sit just about at the top, the top of the soil will sit just about at the top of the pot there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cute little plant out here. I'm going to stick him in my pot here, and I'm going to get some soil in around the sides here. Pull this out of here so you guys can see that a little better. Okay, and I'm going to make sure I pack that soil down. So for me, I like to just stick my little plug right into the corner, so I don't have to fill all 4 sides. I just have to fill 2 sides, but you can do whatever you like. If you prefer them to be centered right in the middle, you can do that too. And fill up around all 4 sides. Okay, so don't be afraid to kind of pack that in there. You want to make sure that it's good and firm. Any excess soil I'm pulling out. I don't want to put any more soil on top of the existing soil that was here. If you bury the base of your plant, you could be opening it up to fungal infections or damp stem or different things. Tomatoes are not such a big worry because they'll actually root just about anywhere along the stem, but some of your other plants like peppers and things could be really sensitive to that. So just be cognizant when you transplant anything, especially perennials, to make sure that you're not burying the plant any more than the top of the soil that it was already growing in. Okay? Once you're done transplanting, make sure you give it a good drink. It's really stressful for these guys, and you want to make sure that they stay nice and moist. Another thing is that I start with moist soil. I don't start with bone dry soil, so I make sure that there's a bit of moisture in my soil that I'm transplanting into anyway. The longer you keep the roots exposed to air and sunlight, the more damage that is done to them. So get them in the soil, get them wet as quickly as possible. Okay guys, now I'm going to show you how to do the other method where we've started with several seedlings in one kind of pot and I want to separate them out. So I'm going to show you how that looks right now. Here I've got my Tiny Tim tomatoes and they have a couple in each pot. This one has 4. So I'm going to separate these guys out. So I'm going to pull them out here and I'm going to be real gentle because they're pretty small still. So I'm not even really pulling on the stems. I'm mostly trying to squish the soil out this way and basically just letting it fall out. So you can see that the roots haven't really, they've just barely holding this bundle together. And that's, if I'm going to separate these, that's where I want them to be. I don't want them to be any bigger than that because then it'll be too stressful on the roots trying to rip them apart when they get too big. So I'm just making a little hole in the center of this 6-pack that I'm going to transplant these little babies into. And I'm going to carefully, in the shade as much as I can here, kind of massage this little bundle apart until I get a plant off of there. So there's my first little baby. I'm gonna just take a little bit more out of here. Stick him in there, and I'm gonna give him a good squish down. A little soil on top, and again, you got to be pretty firm with these guys. Make sure they're stuck in there so they don't grow on some funny angles. Okay, get my next one apart here. Oh, gentle, gentle. Okay, here's my next little guy. Stick him in there. Okay, make sure that's nice and pressed down. The last two, these are the last two little guys here. So this guy you can see is just, he's barely even got any soil on there. And that's okay. We'll get him all fixed up here. Now he's got some soil. Okay, and again we're going to water the heck out of these guys when we're done because that's stressful, right? And try to do this in the shade if you can. Alright, there we go. The soil off the top of these babies. Okay, so there's 4 out of there. And the last thing you're going to want to do is water them, and then make sure you label. Don't forget your labels. In fact, don't even start doing this unless you have all of your labeling stuff with you, because it's a real pain in the butt to go get it afterwards, and then you'll forget what you were doing. So I've got my label here for Tiny Tim. Whoop, there he is. Gonna stick that in my 6-pack so I know that these guys are all Tiny Tims. And that's it. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any other questions that you want me to give you some tidbits on, please feel free to comment below. Also, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and again, that's Ava Lily Permaculture and the Earth Skills Institute.